Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to talk about this work, spider web. So in this video, it will be like a two-part. First part, I will teach you how to make this spider web, but it's a easier version of it. And at the end, I will showcase the complete version of it. So now let's take a look in the Blender. So first I'm going to show you, this is the more complicated version. So you can see this node is really complicated. I can just randomize this. Okay, so you can see, very quick way to have very beautiful shape of the spider web, and you can reduce the water drop. So I will talk about this in detail later. So now let's take a look at what we're going to learn today. We are going to make this simpler version. The node is not too complicated, and the result is actually still very beautiful. It really looks like a spider web. I will put both of these files in my Patreon and Gumroad, so you can go download this. And now let's take a look at how do we make this spider web. So let's create any object. Let's call it web. Create a geometry node. I will also call it web. Spider web, it's actually looks like this. Spring, you just smash it to be a plane, extend some tips to make it like a bridge. So that's what we will do for this. Okay, so after we bring out our geometry node, and let's take a spiral. And we just make the height to be 0 and also go to 0. So now we have some shape looks like this, and this maybe go to 10. Now we want to use extrude mesh, each intersect part to extrude that. Let's use that. It doesn't work with curve, so let's use curve to mesh and set this to be vertex. So now we know this number have some relationship with this because we want it to be just long enough to touch the next point, and also have some relationship with this number divided by this, and fit it to extrude mesh. It will be just to be long enough to touch the next point. Now we use a match by distance, make them really match together. So now we already have a very simple shape like a spider web base. Okay, and now we wanted to extend these tips. We want it to be a little bit longer. We can take out another extrude mesh and set it to be vertex. It looks like it's working, but we need to make sure of that. So use a vector. So now we use a vector to the offset. We can control it where it extrudes, because before we didn't use that. It's kind of goes to the default direction, which is kind of like the normal of it. So it will follow this direction, but now we use this to give a number to make sure we only have the tips that is extrude. Okay, so now it isn't right. So we wanted to give a selection of it. So that's give a condition to do that. We wanted to count the neighbors of this vertex, that it's only have like a less than maybe one neighbor. Besides this, the other point actually they have more than one neighbor, right? So we can use vertex neighbor, I believe. Compare. It will set it to be less than 2, and it will be only the end of it, but also this one, the middle one. But actually we can just delete that, delete geometry, use index. Set it to be equal to 0. So we delete the middle vertex. So now we don't need this. We can make sure we only extrude the tips of it. This in the frame. Let's make the name of it. So now we have the base of this web. So now we take our blur attribute and a set position. So we wanted to smooth out this. So position, okay, and just plug this in. It will just shrink down your whole mesh. That's because we don't have point between, so we need to subdivide it. So let's use a subdivide the mesh, subdivide twice, and can try to smooth out this. It got some result, but we need to do something more about this. We don't want the tips to be smooth because we want it to remain in the same place, but only smooth out inside, so we can get this kind of like a tension. So we already did something similar, so we can just try to copy this. Over here, we need to use a Boolean math, set it to be not. We just put a not after that because we want the opposite of this result. This result give only the tips, but now we wanted to do the opposite, is only the inside we wanted to select. So let's use a not after this, so we can smooth out maybe 60. So let's frame this, call it smooth. Okay, so now we wanted to make the wire have some kind of physics. We wanted to make it hanging, so let's try to do that. We wanted to get the result, this part is 0 and this part to be 1. We wanted to have a value of this, so we can say that when it go to 0.5 it will pull down more. So to get that, we need to convert this back to curve. Now it's mesh. Mesh doesn't give this. So when we convert it to be a curve, we can use a curve parameter to get this. Use a mesh to curve and use a set position and use spine parameter. So let's try to use this set position. We can set the whole thing, but set vector and use some vector math. So now you see we kind of do something weird. That is because each of this line, it's a curve, and also it's a spline, and the spline parameter give this vector. For this is like a 1 and this is 0. So when we scaled this to the offset, we only pull down one side of it, and this is affect less, like a 0. So now we can do flow curve. We use the flow curve to manipulate this to be like that. So now it's like a 0, 0, 1. So the middle part will be more affected. Yeah, so that is the mindset of it. But now maybe we need to have more cut for more smooth result. Subdivide curve twice. It looks quite nice, but if we look at the side of it, every part is pulling down the same value of it, so it looks a little bit weird because of like this part. The distance is very short. In the nature, it really don't need to pull down as the same amount just this long distance, right? Should be pulling down just a little bit. So we can do something about that. Spine length, and we just multiply this again. Let's try that. Yeah, so now it looks pretty realistic. And this, call that hanging. We wanted to rotate it, so let's use transform geometry. If we try to put it at the end of it, let's try to rotate this. We will see hanging effect. It's now work quite perfect because it should be you see this part, it should be hanging down to the ground, not to this like some kind of angle. So don't put it over here, just put with our base web. If we put over here, you can see the hanging is very beautiful. It will be like relative to the ground 90 degree. See that doesn't affect. So now we have these three parts. We have base web, smooth, and also we have this hanging. So now it looks pretty much like a spider web already, but let's make some detail. So let's do it after the base web. Give us some space. What we're going to do first, we want to break apart some of the web to make it like a more real. So that's use of course delete geometry. So now we delete everything, and we can use a noise texture, give a condition. So compare and set it to be 0.5. Let's try to bring it over here and just set this a little bit to see. So now we need to use a color ramp to make it not too even. Just want to break a little bit. Set it to be 40 and control the W. Yeah, you just wanted to play around this to get the right pattern that you are looking for. Right now, I don't want it to delete the tips like all this part. Right now, it is deleting some of this part, right? I don't want it to delete that. We will delete that after this to be another the setup for that. So now I make a condition for this. So remember, we also have this, so we can duplicate that. Use the Boolean math. Set it to subtract. And set it to be like less than 3. So now we will not delete. So now we try to delete some of the tips. Delete geometry again. Just duplicate this. Yeah, so now it's deleting all of it, but we want it to be only some of it. So let's use random value and also Boolean math, and use end and set this to be Boolean. Okay, so we can frame this and play around more with this. When you deleting some of web, you will see something like a didn't connecting to anywhere else. So we try to delete that. So let's use another delete geometry. Use a mesh island. Compare now equal to 0. Integer. Yeah, so this will delete this part. We can also give some random value for these tips. So use just a random value, or you can use a noise texture. You can try different result and just give to this extrude mesh. Okay, now let's try to give a camera angle. And now we can put some water drop on top of it. So now use instance on point. Let's put it over here and use echo sphere. And let's try to plug in and join geometry. So obviously it's too big, so let's make it smaller. Okay, so we got this. And now you see it is like a instancing sphere according to each cut you have for your curve. I want it to make it even by the distance. So let's use a resample curve and set it to be length. Smaller number, something like this, 0.03. So now we have all this sphere connecting to each other. Be too much, so we can use like maybe a random value to just delete some of it. Okay, and the size, of course, we want it to be a little bit random, so no texture. Maybe map range. Let's try to render this. And now it is a curve. We need to make it to be a mesh, curve to mesh. Use a curve circle to give a profile. The resolution can be very low, and this. Okay, let's try to frame this. Give us some background. Let's give us some material. So let's create two material. One is for web and one is for the drop. So we need to set material. And the web and shade smooth. Let's use the water drop. Basically just make it like a glossy and bring down the smoothness, and let's go to the web. It's very close to be a glass, but it may be more like a little bit metallic. Yeah, so it's very simple. And now we can take a look at the web. We can, first of all, maybe we can make the size a little bit more contrast. Some is really small. We can bring it down a little bit. So transform geometry, make it a little bit lower. Another thing that you can try a little bit, it's if we don't convert it to be a mesh. So if we just mute this, let it remain to be a curve, and if we try to create a empty here on top of it, use set material, curve radius. So you see, if we create like a hair, so we can try to use hair to render this. We don't convert it to be a mesh. In this case, it doesn't give a big impact because it's not very complicated. It doesn't have a lot of mesh. But in some situation, if you have a lot of this line you want it to be rendered, maybe it will be faster to just use hair to render that instead of convert it to be a mesh. So that's something you can keep in mind, that you can do it in the future. Basically, that's as how you make your spider web. Now let's take a look the one that I made. It's much complicated. Let's compare them. What other detail you could including to in your own version. So if you download this, just drag this to your assets library, and from your assets library you just drag it out. Let's bring up the water drop and make it a little bit smaller. First, you can just use this OW to give a different shape. That's the quickest way to give a different result. And let's see some other detail. We can control this. So this smooth, you can see some change of it, tightness. If you bring it down, it will be a little bit looser. This subdivision is don't really need to change that, and this merge by distance, you can sometimes you can give some interesting result. And unevenness, look, if I bring it all the way to 0, it is basically very even. But if I bring it up, it will have some part it's missing, and some kind of shape that is not totally even. And also this, the unevenness of the ring. See this? This is totally even. All the ring is distance is even. Bring it up more. You can see some distance between it will be not so even, right? Yeah, so this ring focus, it's like how the center, how near the center it will be more like a tension, so it will be like a more ring, and the outer part will be looser. That's the unevenness. And the broken, of course, you can broke some of your web, and even you see this, some of this part, this version I made, when you break this spider web, it will hanging down, like have some kind of gravity. It's not just like a missing, it will be hanging down. So the broken have three part. First part will be small detail, another is like a bigger chunk of the broken, the other is the tips, one other is the middle. So you can delete the middle part. Sometimes the spider web is actually looking like that. That's the broken. Okay, so let's see what else. We have this hanging that we mentioned in the earlier tutorial, and I have another. It's only for the broken part. So the broken part that I just mentioned before, all this stuff, and also this, it have its own hanging effect, and also this center hanging, it pull down the center part, so it will not be like so straight stiff. In your own version from the earlier tutorial, you can try to figure out how maybe you can pull this off. It gives a little bit more realism. Yeah, so the wing basically just give us some distortion and make it a little bit like blow by the wing. Yeah, so that is the wing effect, and it is without real simulation, but I figured out a way that you can use real Blender simulation to affect this. That will be using this theme proxy. So for the proxy, you want it to be this to be a mesh line, because right now we only wanted the line. We don't want it to have any face, because we wanted to use this line to do the simulation. So you just click on to the mesh line and duplicate this and convert it to mesh. Basically, you just like apply this modifier. So we name it to be proxy. Okay, so now we try to use a simulation. So now if we play the timeline, it will just be totally falling off. So now we need to give this some ping, and now we go to the attribute of this proxy, and you see some part I have hashtag, just convert it to be a vertex group. Okay, so now let's try to use the one have two hashtag called ping radius. Let's use that as the ping. And now we try to bake it again. So after the bake, let's try to play this. So you can see it is hanging down like kind of like a cloth, and you can fine-tune this using this web sim ping weight and put it before the simulation. Okay, let's try to bake it again. Yeah, so this side looks better. It will not pull down so much. So remember just using this. After you simulate your proxy, let's go back to the original web. And now we turn off this use mesh line because now we wanted to render it out. And pick this to your proxy, so you will copy the position of the proxy for the simulation. And now you can turn on your water drop. Okay, so this stuff will just follow, including the water drop, will follow your simulation. So you have this that you can render. Yeah, so that is for if you wanted to using simulation. But one thing you have to keep in mind is after you do this, you don't want it to change anything about your web shape, otherwise it will be messed up, because be able to put the position as your proxy is using index. So if you change the shape of your original web, index will not match. So just make sure your web shape is what you want. Now you can using the proxy to do that. I will put this on my Patreon and Gumroad. You can go download this. So I hope you enjoying making spider web. I will seeing you in the next video. Thank you. Bye bye.